This is the Thrive Podcast with Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. And now, Pastor Fred Jeff Smith.
Hello and welcome to the Thrive Podcast for the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you are either viewing or listening to this second podcast of 2019. We are in our second year of our podcast. We are so appreciative to those who consistently view and or listen. We do want to remind you that the podcast has expanded from 1 drop a week to 5 drops a week, and we hope that you will listen in every day for new content. Today is our interview drop, and I'm very happy and honored to have a distinguished group of friends and colleagues here to share with me. Collectively, we are known as Prophetic Voices. Individually, I have Pastor Tommy N. Gibson of the Donaldson Chapel Baptist Church, Pastor Dale Flowers of the New Sunlight Baptist Church, Dr. Errol Domain of the Elm Grove Baptist Church, Reverend Jennifer Jones, who is the director of Shiloh's Charitable Foundation and the Minister of Social Justice Issues here at Shiloh, Reverend Demetria Jones Smith, who is the Minister of Christian Education here at Shiloh. And we thought it would be a good idea. Prophetic Voices came together some time ago around certain social justice issues that affected each of us in our communities, like-minded individuals who thought it would be good for us to sit down and talk and find ways that we can respond to those issues. And we have hung together ever since, trying to respond to the needs that exist within our community. And we thought it would be a good idea just to have the entire group, or most of the entire group, there are others who could not be with us today, just sit down and talk about prophetic voices and what it is that we're trying to respond to. First, thank you all for taking the time to share with us. Second, everybody, tell us what you think about prophetic voices. I can't have silence. That doesn't help us here. Y'all got to say something.
I think it's a golden opportunity to create a transformation in our communities. When I say our communities, we all here, we serve primarily an African-American urban community. And so I think this is a golden opportunity to plant seeds that we can do some things.
I agree with Pastor Gibson. It's an opportunity for us to get more done together as a group than we each can individually. So I think it's a great group, and I'm looking forward to us doing some great things.
So I guess if we're going around the table, I think what Prophetic Voices does is breathe life into communities and hope into communities that otherwise, may be in despair or just thinking things are not going to change. And here are thoughtful leaders who are trying to encourage persons in our community to say that things can get better if we make them better.
It's an exciting group of people that we've come to love and appreciate and watch as they not only talk the talk, but walk the walk and get engaged and are actively involved in the community. It also provides an opportunity for debate around this table. Everybody's their own individual. They bring different perspectives to this table. So it's not only are we friends and colleagues, but it also creates an environment that I think mirrors what needs to happen in our community. Mm-hmm. So it's exciting to me through the years of being an activist and organizer, a clergy person in this community, to watch what these young men and women have done and will continue to do that will add value, great value to our community.
I believe Prophetic Voices gives us an opportunity collectively to make our theology public. In the realm of theological education, it's this rise of this idea of public theology, which is basically how you take your understanding of God, and as Christians, our understanding of of Christ, and how do you link that to communities, to lived experience. So it gives us an opportunity as a group to do what we do in our individual lives and ministry, which is link the gospel, the social gospel, to lived experiences for our community, and together, as Pastor Flowers said, we can do things together that we might not be able to do apart. So, exciting time.
I think one of the things that is important to point out is that we recognize as a group that we're not the only group that exists within our community that has interest in these areas, in areas of police reform, in areas of payday lending, in areas of fairness and equity for the marginalized within our communities. What is it that you think that draws us together and helps us to work cohesively and positively in the community? What is it about us that you, and I'm not trying to say we're better than anybody else, but every group has to have its own unique cohesiveness that makes it work. What do you think is it that makes it work for us?
I think it's a theological compatibility.
Yeah.
Recently, a well-known televangelist, I think his name John Maxwell. John Maxwell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
John Maxwell made a statement that Jesus was not about social justice, and that the church doesn't have anything to do with social justice. And my library is about 30 or 40 years old, so I searched out one or two of his books that was tucked back in there and promptly put them in the trash can.
One's holding up the leg of my sofa, and I'm not joking.
So, but that was not. I was not surprised about that because you could read most of the books and certain texts how they're interpreted. But I think what brings us together is that we recognize that the biblical world was filled with, in Israel, was filled with people who were oppressed most of the time. Egypt, Babylon, Persia, Rome, the Greeks, and then the Ottomans and all and so forth. So, and that interpretation that stems from that was passed down through many of our ancestors. So I think that's what brings us together.
I agree. Yeah. It's a mindset, a mentality, and we all don't see the gospel and, of course, the work of God the same. And there's no one way of doing it. Our mindset is, around this table, is after we save an individual, then what? It's not about just, okay, I'm saved and now let's make our way to heaven. Well, no, there's time between then, now and then. What do we do now?
Right.
And we see the cries. We feel the needs of the citizens of the city of Baton Rouge, and and the state at large. And I've kind of got that. If not now, when? If not us, who? So we've got to do it.
I think the thing that initially brought us together, and correct me if I'm wrong, we all coalesced around the Alton Sterling shooting in 2016. Is that where we first started sitting down and talking? Was it before that?
It was before that.
Before that.
All right, so help
First
me.
meeting.
When was it?
Yeah, I'm thinking it
When
was.
Tommy
Refresh
pulled us
my
around.
recollection, as they say.
It's been it was a year or two before then.
Okay.
I can't remember what was the.
I'm trying to get to what it was that brought us together in the first place. Because, understand, I'll speak for myself. I'm not much of a joiner. I'm not big on groups, and don't act like you didn't know what it is. I have a problem with groups that already have preset agendas, and all they want you to do is fall in line with their agenda, especially when their agenda doesn't necessarily line up with my own. And yet, we seem to have found a way to come together and find more that we agree upon than we disagree upon, and we have been able to hang together throughout that period of time. And I think, I for one find it very helpful and very beneficial to know that I'm not the only person out there who thinks the way that I think.
But it was before Alton Sterling. I know we met at Donaldson, and then Jennifer put together a workshop for us on something. I mean, just on community organizing and issues, and we've been kind of going ever since.
Who's the president of Prophetic Voices?
So we don't have a president, and I think that's what makes us different. I can't talk about anybody else. But,
Emphasize that point for us.
We're not concerned about who's going to get the limelight or who's going to get the pat on the back. And I think the other thing about it is we genuinely like to be around one another. We debate, and we deal with serious issues, but we also laugh a lot and joke. And make fun of one another. So I think those are two things that make us different. And the third thing is that we are unashamed and don't run away from our culture. We ain't scared to say black in public.
Right.
Amen. Black and Christian in public. Right.
I think what's key for me around this group is, and what I enjoy most is certainly that we get along, but that we all bring our different perspectives, and it's appreciated. Nobody's trying to set an agenda for us, and there's no big argument when we don't agree. I think in many ways our personalities are similar. We don't particularly like unproductive meetings, and the way we view church is not just on Sunday morning.
Right.
It's about what goes on when we say the benediction, and the evidence of that is the work that I've seen all of you do, and others who are engaged and involved, and you do it in a way that's productive. You know, a lot of folk will join an organization just to be a part of. And I think this group has shown me something different. Now, I do participate in a lot of other groups that are out there, and I'm not trying to say that we're any better than that group. It's just the dynamics of this group that feeds me spiritually, and even in a social sense of what we get to do. Because you can't always talk to preachers, and they just don't want you to. All they want you to know is that they're a preacher. Not a servant, not an activist. And they see the gospel in action differently than what we see. They see the gospel in action about how they dress and how they hoop, and social justice doesn't mean the same to a lot of folks. So this is what has been really fulfilling for me.
But even the way we interact with each other, you know, we don't run around saying pastor and doctor and this and that. I mean, we recognize and affirm those things about each other, but one-on-one, we really do like and enjoy. And I know, me not being from here, it's wonderful to be able to affiliate with a group of ministers, clergy, who have that like-minded, that liberation theology. I'm grounded in that. I was bathed in that in seminary and even before. And so to be able to interact with clergy that have that mindset and don't just speak it or preach it, but live it. Live that. That's valuable.
We have the audacity to have a bona fide PhD among us. And
You need to stop.
Yes, indeed. Prayerfully, others on the way.
we don't have to call him doctor. We don't have to get him the head of the table.
I know. I say two amongst us. Even though one of them isn't here, but amen.
So what are the issues that Prophetic Voices are wrestling with currently? What issues are present right now are pregnant right now within our community that we're wrestling with?
Well, you know, one of the things that I think has been really successful over the last several months, over the last year really, was the work that we did around civic engagement and making sure that our community understood how important it was for them to vote. You know, and we didn't just ask them to go out and vote. We did a series of things collectively that helped to educate and give folk all that they needed to be able to make intelligent decisions, and then provide an opportunity. And as a result of that, there were a number of issues. You know, the tax, the mental health piece, we certainly, in many ways, tried to give a broad brush stroke of helping our folk understand that, but we are even going further than that now as we try to make sure that it's implemented in a way that benefits our entire community. So that's one of the things. We're still talking about Alton Sterling's death.
Yes.
And we try among ourselves individually and collectively make sure that conversation doesn't die in this community. We're looking at the kind of leadership that we need to be able to change some of those dynamics. So to have a bigger discussion, and not just to discuss it, but to think strategically about not accepting what is, and how do we coalesce a community around knowing that they have the ability to change what is. So
I agree.
those are some of the things.
And I think to bring legitimacy and take out to attack hypocrisy, one of the issues you were mentioning about civic engagement. I recall when President Obama was president, he wore a gray suit or a brown suit.
They lost their mind.
And they lost their mind. And now today we put up with a man who's absolutely crazy.
Yes.
Certified crazy. Ignorant, dumb. And so what does this have to do with this? Well, we had a point in time where they called out some of the African American councilpersons for a decision that they've made. But yet the same culture supports a nut as president. So
Secret Service coming to your house, you know that.
You're talking about I got a little something. I got baby boy.
But that's part of that's part of the dilemma, the inherent hypocrisy that plays itself out every day, not just in national politics, but as it trickles all the way down into state and local politics, and the fact that there just does not seem to be, although we've already acknowledged that there are other groups who seek to address all of these issues, there does not seem to be enough that is being said, that is being vocalized about the realities of these situations on a consistent basis. One of the things that I know is that you can't just say it once. You have to say it 100 times, 1,000 times before people begin to really hear what it is that you are saying. And one of the things that I appreciate is that if I'm saying something here at Shiloh, I know that something similar is being said in Elm Grove, something similar is being said at New Sunlight, something similar is being said at Donaldson Chapel, and it magnifies radiates out into the community, and that helps to get the message across that there is a level of dissatisfaction that cannot simply be brushed away or ignored, but has to be dealt with and responded to. So that's one of the things that I find so very beneficial about knowing that I'm not the only voice out here saying these things.
I agree. I think we support each other in that way, and it's helpful when you open a door and it's closed, and then you open the next door and it's closed, and you keep opening these doors to close doors. It can be frustrating.
Right.
But around this table, we support each other.
Right.
And we say, well, hey, you open the next one, I'll open the next one, and we keep pushing and we keep pushing, and there's that support there because of the politics of what goes on around us, it's set up for us to quit. And I think we're here to help each other, and I appreciate about everybody around this table that I know I can come to you guys and get the assistance that's needed, get the support that's needed, and we're going to work together to get it done.
One of the things that's coming up fairly quickly has to do with gerrymandered and districts that have been drawn in such a way as to nullify or limit the effectiveness of African American voting. And one of the things that I know all of us are concerned about is making sure that by the time the lines are being redrawn in 2021, that there be more fairness, more equity that we see. And so we're working now to try to make people aware and to talk with those leaders within our community that will be the ones who have to make the decisions as to how these lines are being drawn. So what do you think about the way that we're addressing that?
So I think, going back to earlier comments, what is powerful is that our congregants, the body of Christ, hears this message and is able to rally around the message of liberation theology or social justice, and the fact that we've been able to bring people together allows them to see that not only are we hearing it, but our collective efforts will be able to make a difference, so that in the future, when we are ready to tackle some more complex issues, if you will, we will already have a track record, not just from external forces, but from the people that we're counting on to work with us, who worship with us every day. They'll know that this is not just about the shout, but now let's go and tackle these issues.
You know, it's always makes me happy to see and sense our folk as they come together to work together around what seems to be complex issues, and helping them understand systems and how they can go about dismantling that, and how they can understand their role as it relates to working to make sure that marginalized folk are brought into this. An example of that, of course, happens often for us, but around this civic engagement focus, we worked with each one of your congregations and then brought these folk together. It was absolutely something that I think needs to happen over and over and over again in this community, to actually see these folk, once they get the tools that they need to be able to do that, and make Jesus alive outside of Sunday morning. It was just marvelous to watch. Now, I know that there have been opportunities and times in this community where you could go to a meeting and it's almost a stage kind of thing, rather than absolutely engaging the folk and allowing them to do it for themselves. That then begins to affect not only their personal lives and their family life, but the congregational life and then the community life. So it's an exciting piece, and as this continues to happen, and as it's been mentioned earlier, when we talk about liberation theology, I think some of the things that have drawn us together also is that even though Pastor Smith and I are a generation or two separate, we both went to Baton Rouge High in a very difficult time. My time was a little bit more difficult than his. And of course, Tommy Gibson was a part of that set too. And of course, these young fellows, they've tried to just knock open some doors and do some things. And I don't know what Demetria brought to us from Kansas City. She's come in fighting. So the spirits that are around this table is important. And I just see something that I know is God is breathing for this community, and allow us to be able to do what we do and to work in the manner in which we do.
One of the things that I have found as I do these podcasts, I'm often sitting across the table from people considerably younger than I am, and one of the questions that I ask each one of them, generally as I'm closing, is, do you have any intentions of staying in Baton Rouge? Is Baton Rouge the place where you want to live? Is Baton Rouge the place where you want to raise your family? And I'm sad to report that more often than not, the answer is no. That they feel like in order for them to fulfill their own personal aspirations, they have to leave Baton Rouge. What does it say about our community that young African American people feel like they cannot fulfill their hopes and dreams within our city?
That says a lot about our state. I have 4 sons, 3 live out of state, and medical issues prevent the 4 from moving. And so recently, I don't know how statistically correct the United Way report was that would say, but 19% of the folk in this region are poor, and you could probably double that number when you include the working poor, that they're unable to provide for the basic needs. But when you say talking to us about our age, I was not surprised, because we always talk about that this is a poor city. And many of those are probably, the numbers probably higher in the black community. So what I think it says a lot about the history of our state. It's a poor state. It's a poor state, and we still have vestiges of the plantation system left over, because the poverty is disproportionate. Yes, the black middle class have grown, but young whites are leaving also. So it's no opportunities.
Kids are going to Houston, they're going to Dallas, they're going to Austin,
Atlanta.
they're going to Atlanta.
DC.
They're moving to these places because they feel like the opportunity is greater there. What is it that you all see that can be done that can stem that tide and cause some retention to take place?
The economics is beyond my expertise, but it's also cultural reasons that they leave. That leave a closed mindset, the hypocrisy. We were talking about some things the other day. Just total hypocrisy. Different value systems for different folks. Conservatism in a hypocritical manner. It applies to some and not others.
Definitely.
And I think that's our charge around this table. One of our charges is not to make it better for us, but so as we work, these young folks will see an opportunity, and they will see, doors being open for them. But we're going to have to be the ones. Our pastor often says, the trees that we're sitting under, the shade that we're enjoying, we didn't plant these trees. And now we've got to start planting trees. We're not going to enjoy the shade of it. But our mindset has got to be, I've got a 22-year-old and a 10-year-old. My 22-year-old isn't going anywhere because her mom won't let her. but my 10-year-old, I can already see in her head, she's already like, I'm out of here. She's 10 years old, but that's, her mindset. So if she wants to go, and if any of them want to go, fine, but I'd like them to have the same opportunity here than they do elsewhere. And that's the work, that we're doing now, I do believe.
But we play in the hypocrisy in my other life in criminal defense work. Say he had a gun. See, we're a Second Amendment state. We love guns. What's the problem? It's not he had a gun. It's who had it.
He was black.
I'm looking at a big billboard at Gonzalez gun show.
Pages in the paper.
We have you want to have a gun buyback? Some of my people need their gun in the house. I have members asking me, do we need a security guard at the church? But then the prosecutor would tell you, well, but they're killing in the neighborhoods. You can't predict who's going to do that. But it's who has the guys. We have a lot to do on our end, but it's vestiges left over from a previous system. So I think that hypocrisy has a lot to do with our money and hypocrisy.
I think that plantation mentality works both ways. So even with us in our community, always making sure that it's all right with the dominant culture, that we are even human sometimes, that we do what we do. And as far as changing that, I think we who are thinking have to tackle the hard thing to bring about innovation through probably 4 groups. Black church, of course, because we own it, right? The black bank, the black school, and then the street, right? If we could somehow, maybe it is just planting seeds in our generation, that the next generation will break it up. But I think that's the way that we change the mentality to bring about change for our community in real, lasting ways.
You know, I think a lot of why, as we talk to young folk and all they think about is getting out of here, and others who've been around for a while, they have just gotten apathetic because they don't think that anything can change. Yes. I think the work that we do is have to demonstrate that it's possible, and then help them understand that they have to be a part of that change. Yes. So we could sit back and we could preach to put salve over the pain that comes in front of us every Sunday and every Bible study, or we could help empower them to see how this could actually move. So I think there's a lot of things that's going on, especially with our millennial group. They're kind of all over the place, but they're willing now, because they've seen it happen in other places, to know that they've got to be a part of that change. And I think part of our role is to make sure that we provide them with the tools and that they need to actually make that happen. And then we have to be models of how that happens. So I think we're headed somewhere, and part of the work that we do collectively together, and as we share with others in the community that's doing it, they'll begin to see that, because it's just like we talk about church hoppers. They get disgusted over something that happened in the church and leave, and then they go to another and find that it's worse. The same thing moving to these other cities. You move to some cities and you realize it would have been cheaper to stay in Baton Rouge.
And also, having lived literally all over the world for a number of reasons in my life, plantation structures and mentality exist all over the place. So you can go to Texas, you can go to Atlanta. There might be some additional opportunities, but some of those same factors are going to meet you there. Okay. So if you have not been given the tools as a young person to be able to radically transform your mind, to know, although vestiges of a plantation system might be operative, that doesn't mean that you're a plantation worker. So you have to change your mind. And so part of what I think we're doing is giving young people and people in general the tools to be able to dream and vision again. That you can make Baton Rouge be the beloved community, be Zion if we're going all biblical and theological. Wherever you are can be that, but you have to be invested in making it so. And so, going someplace else, well, when you're young, it's nice to do that. And hey, I say all the time, go experience it, and if you don't like it, you can always come home. But wherever you go, there will be forces that seek to dehumanize you, that seek to make you less than, to keep you from understanding that you are light, you are love, that you are somebody as a black individual. So if we don't even give you the tools to know that, regardless of where you go, you're still going to struggle.
Am I wrong to believe that change can happen more quickly in cities like Baton Rouge than in cities like Dallas, Houston, Austin, Atlanta, simply because we're not as big as those cities, and because we are smaller, because we know Baton Rouge is really a small town. I don't care what you say, the metropolitan area, everybody knows everybody. I believe that because of our size, and because we have relationships with one another that are not just tangential, but that we actually have substantive relationships, whether we want them or not, with people, that we have greater opportunity to have meaningful exchanges with those people that you might not have in a Houston or a Dallas or an Atlanta. What do you think about that?
I think that's the Southern culture. I mean, the master and the slave had great relationship, as long as the master was master and the slave was slave. And we talk about it's great relationships with your co-workers, but when I become the boss, it changes. It changes. So, and I think our young people, and I'm not talking out of my head. I know.
Sure.
I have 4 sons.
Sure.
And so, but one of the things that's difficult to change is the economic structure. You say why young people leave. You see fourplexes and high-rise and buildings come up, and it's difficult to get capital only for a car and houses in certain areas.
Right.
You know, it's difficult. It's difficult to get bank money for affordable housing or venture capital or whatever you want to call it for community endeavors. But it seems like some people find money to do whatever they want. If you got a shovel in a pickup truck, you can get a loan. So, but our young people who have dreams, you can have them dream, but one of the things, you can get the money. If you don't get a plant job or work in the health industry, a state government, what opportunities there are here? You know, there's no high tech, there's no.
Black entrepreneurship is something that we're always talking about. You know, we need to reemphasize black entrepreneurship.
But you have to get the money.
Yeah, I understand. My question is there a path that will open doors of opportunity for black entrepreneurship within our city that any of you see?
It will take a radical change mentality
On our part.
change of our mentality to decide to start taking care of us and stop depending on the so-called dominant culture to fund what we do. And that's more than a notion, because you got to change us first. And we stop thinking that we got to get the approval of somebody else before we do anything.
Well, it goes back to what you said about the black church, the black bank, the black school, and the black street.
Right.
The idea that we have to radically change our mindsets towards black banking, but also understanding that the way that the first black banks in the country were founded was people said we're going to put our pennies together. But it's that, and that a black bank is just as good. In fact, it will be better than any other bank because we are in control. So it's the radical transformation of the mind.
Right. It'll take the masses to make that happen, rather than depending on a few at the top to go talk to Mr. So-and-so to make it happen for us.
And I think going back to your question about the size and will it be easier, I don't know if us being smaller will make it even more difficult because I can control this while it's small. And as it gets bigger, well, I begin to lose some of the control. So it may be even more difficult to do it because we are smaller. And those who are in control
I have relatives who live in large cities and who all, you know, even when I was a child, I don't know why you want to stay in Baton Rouge. You know, why don't you come out to where we are? I do know this. Sorry about that, Terrence. I do know this, that if I lived in Los Angeles, I'd probably have a more difficult time getting the mayor on the phone than living in Baton Rouge. I don't think I would have such an easy time getting the mayor of Houston or the mayor of Dallas on the phone as the mayor of Baton Rouge. That's just what I'm thinking. But even when the mayor was not African American, we could pick up the phone and call and say, Mr. Mayor, we need to have a meeting. We need to sit down and talk.
I think what we've learned, though, so what you could get the mayor on the phone. The real power is in the folk who control the money. You know, we've had a black president for eight years.
Yeah.
You know, power is the ability to get something accomplished. So, yeah, you may can get in a smaller situation the mayor answer your phone, but when Boss Hall comes, he's gonna get the phone. His call's gonna get through too, and he's gonna be on a longer conversation. You know, so I think it's, you know, we forget this is a capitalistic environment.
It is.
You got to have the money. You know, or enough of the masses to influence what happens with the money. So
there are two black financial institutions in the Baton Rouge area that I'm aware of. One is a bank and one is a credit union. What do we do to expand that number from 2 to 3 or 4? And how do we feel about the fact that even though we have these two, they're not always accommodating to the needs that we present to them? In total fairness, I know personally, trying to work with one of them was an extremely arduous process, and finally, after 2 years, we had to walk away. And when we walked away, after 2 years, within 3 months, we were able to do what we needed to do with somebody else. So that kind of frustration, not so long ago, I was advocating that we all move our money into this particular black institution. I ain't so sure I feel that way anymore.
I think it's key that we be strategic in our thinking, and part of what that means, using the example that you just gave, is that if a contingent group of us would move money to a particular place that wasn't necessarily African American owned, it could be led, or we could help create the environment to make sure that there was African American leadership there that then could spin off to something else. But part of what's, I can't say can't happen or needs to happen is that the level of trust among churches and pastors who could understand their collective power around just on one Monday morning, all going down to the bank, whatever bank you're part of, and moving your money collectively together, then gives us the kind of power that we might need to say that these young folk who need to get some loans to start their business and to buy homes or whatever, that's when that kind of thing happened. But that goes back to the slave mentality.
Definitely.
So we have to deal with that historical piece as well.
So I think we have to be honest and say that there is a different kind of mentality between the black bourgeoisie and the so-called bourgeoisie and the masses, right? Because those people who are sitting around board tables at those institutions making decisions may not even care about the people who have to move up and down Eddie Robinson Boulevard.
Right.
And so that's where we come in as a collective and say, okay, we're bringing this money here and we want X number of things to happen in our community, or we're taking our business somewhere else. So we got to treat them like we would treat
anybody else,
the other bank.
That's right.
This is going to drop as this is being recorded. It is Thursday, January 10th. This is going to drop on Monday, January 14th. My assumption is our federal government will still be in shutdown by the time that this drops. What are your feelings as clergy about the government shutdown and how it affects the people who attend worship with you?
I think we have to be sympathetic enough to know that there are people who are affected in one way or another, and not remain so hyper spiritual that we don't forget that there are people who are genuinely worried about their future, who don't know how they're going to feed their children, or maybe even embarrassed by the plight that they're in, and try our best to deal with very real issues, even if it means saying, hey, if you need some help, contact me on the side. I'm not going to bring you in front of the congregation and put a $100 bill in your hand, so that we can help people through this. Because, we can shout all we want, but Integer is not going to say, how big is your faith?
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that what our president said?
Yes.
They'll work with them. No, folks are not going to work with you.
Have a garage sale.
Yeah.
Sell your stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Foolishness.
Exactly.
But also, I think being sympathetic is important, but it also reminds us that many, many people and families in this country would be in trouble if they did not have a check.
Oh, God, yes.
2 weeks, miss one paycheck.
Yes, indeed.
How many people in the position that if you missed your paycheck for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, God forbid any longer than that, that you'd still be in a good spot because you have the requisite, they say you need to have a minimum of 6 months of this and that. Most people don't have that. And then when you look at marginalized African American communities, Latino communities, poor people don't have it. So it also reminds us too, just the plight, the economic plight that our people in our communities are in, and then always still thinking, how do we help ourselves to be more self-determinant?
There's something in our communities that we all know, but sometimes we become so sophisticated that we forget, but everybody need a side hustle.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's funny you say that. I remember when I first started pastoring, I was pastoring in New Orleans, Louisiana, and one of the mentors, one of the preachers, a friend of my father's, who took me under his wing when I was there was Reverend Zebedee Bridges, pastored Asia Baptist Church. Zebedee Bridges had about 200 rent houses in the New Orleans area, and he used to tell me all the time, if you just depended on church folk in order to pay your bills, you ain't gonna make it. You got to have something on the side. So what you're saying resonates with me based upon my experiences with him. But the truth of the matter is, most of us, I'll just speak for myself, I ain't got nothing else. I thank God I am paid, and my entire adult life I've been paid by the church. I've never worked anywhere outside the church. To me, it's one of the great things about being in the pastorate that the Lord has blessed me to see. I don't get paid by white folk. I am not beholden to white folk. Every dollar that my dad used to say, every piece of bread on your table is Baptist bread. that was put there. Black Baptist bread. And that's what my experience has been. That being said, there are people out there who, if they miss not 2 paychecks, if they just miss 1 paycheck, they're in a world of trouble. And they don't have a side hustle, and they're going to turn to the church, and the church, they're going to say, church, can you help me? And the truth of the matter is, if we have enough members who work who don't get paid, then it won't be long before the church is not going to be able to help people as well. This is a dire crisis that we have been led into by an egomaniac who really has nothing more on his agenda than just to cater to alt-right manifestos and belief systems, and has no basis in reality. And yet I don't see where the Democratic Party has an adequate response at this time to bring this whole thing to a close. And we're just pawns on the chessboard that are being knocked off one after another.
You know, the sad part, or the frightening part for me, is that as we sit around this table, we can feel our people's pain because we've been there. We're not there right now, if you understand what I'm saying. Donald Trump and Congress, if you want the truth, except these new ones who have just come in. They don't know what that is. They can't really feel the pain of what we experience, even in our mission work, in terms of how we help the community. We, for the last several months, have had as many folk in our congregation as we have folk coming in from the community that we have to help. And it's not all of us have chronic folk who continue to come. But I'm talking about people who you wouldn't imagine are having the kind of concern. So when we think about how the federal government is not even thinking about this, the sad piece is that they don't even, I don't want to say care, they just don't know. They haven't been hungry. They haven't had to figure out how their light bill was going to get paid. Or they hadn't had to make a choice about whether or not they're going to get their medicine, the whole bottle, or could just get a few pills. Just think about the elderly in this dynamic. It's just unbelievable. But and to say that, just to have faith and hold on, help is on the way. So that's why we do what we do.
I think everything around the table is truthful, has been stated. I think that, I know that when our community begins to feel this, the church is the first place. That's going to take the hit. As in, if our members are not able to take care of themselves financially, the first place that we're going to cut back. I've got to pay energy. I've got to pay my house note. church isn't going to get it.
Right.
And then we're not able to provide for others who are in need.
Right.
So it has an effect not only on our members, but on us as a church being able to minister to others in that way.
Surely.
So we've got to not only use our voices, but whatever mechanism we have to get with Congress to somehow reach our president, and let him know that what they are doing is not only, I'm not going to argue about a wall. I don't know anything about a wall. But what I do know
he doesn't
is,
either.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But what I do know is people should not be used as pawns
Right.
in your game in order to receive some wall that, from what most folks are saying, isn't going to do any good.
Right.
So I think that we need to find a way to address the needs of our people again, to change some mentalities, and it starts with us. I believe that the church is the difference maker. I think when Christ said, "Upon this rock I'll build my church, and the very gates of hell won't prevail against it," He didn't give that power to the White House. He didn't give it to Congress. He gave it to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have to
Yes,
use
sir.
it for the betterment of our community.
Yes. Any last words anybody want to say? I really appreciate the time that you all have given to us today, to the Thrive Podcast audience. Anything anybody want to say as a closing?
This has been great. Conversation is very rich.
Yeah. We do this all the time.
We do.
Yeah.
We're just on camera today.
Thank you all so much for viewing. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next time.